Nobody noticed the girl in the back row, not the popular kids laughing at their phones, not the football coach who only saw athletic potential, not even her own parents, too busy arguing about medical school rankings at dinner. Maya Chen was invisible, the kind of invisible that makes you wonder if you even exist, until one Tuesday afternoon when Mrs. Rodriguez decided to actually look. She'd been teaching for 30 years, seen thousands of teenagers walk through her classroom door, the overachievers, the troublemakers, the class clowns desperately performing for attention. But Maya was different. While other students pretended to work on their essays, sneaking glances at Instagram, Maya did something strange. She drew. Not the mindless stick figures bored kids sketch during lectures. Real art. In the margins of her notebooks, on the backs of assignment sheets, tiny, intricate worlds that seemed to pulse with life. Mrs. Rodriguez watched this for weeks. Every class, same pattern. Maya would finish her work in half the time it took everyone else, then disappear into her pencil and paper. Her hand moved with this quiet urgency, like she was racing against something invisible, like if she stopped drawing, she might stop breathing. Most teachers would have told her to pay attention, to stop doodling and focus, but Mrs. Rodriguez had learned something in 3 decades of teaching. Sometimes the quiet ones aren't quiet because they have nothing to say. Sometimes they're quiet because nobody's learned their language yet. She'd seen it before. 20 years ago, there was a boy named Marcus, sat in the back corner, never spoke, failed half his classes. Everyone wrote him off as lazy, unmotivated, another kid slipping through the cracks. But Mrs. Rodriguez noticed he always had headphones on between classes, always tapping rhythms on his desk, always writing what looked like poetry in the margins. She'd asked to see his notebook one day, found lyrics, hundreds of songs he'd written, never shared. She'd connected him with the school's music teacher, helped him record a demo. Today, Marcus produces albums from major artists, makes more money than everyone who called him a failure combined, all because one teacher decided that silence might be hiding something extraordinary. That's what Mrs. Rodriguez saw when she looked at Maya. Not a quiet kid, not a struggling student, a person screaming in a language nobody else had bothered to learn. On a Thursday after class, as students rushed out like the building was on fire, Mrs. Rodriguez called out, "Maya, can you stay for a minute?" The girl froze, that particular kind of freeze that comes from years of trying not to be noticed. Her hand instinctively covered her notebook, protecting it like a wounded animal. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, I just want to see your notebook." Maya's face went absolutely pale. "It's nothing, Mrs. Rodriguez, just doodles, stupid stuff to keep my hands busy." "May I see it anyway?" For a long moment, Maya just stood there. Her fingers gripped that notebook so tight her knuckles went white. Mrs. Rodriguez could see the war happening behind the girl's eyes, the desperate need to be seen, fighting against years of learning to hide, the hope that maybe someone would understand, battling the terror of being exposed and found wanting. Then, slowly, like she was handing over a piece of her soul, Maya placed it on the desk and stepped back, waiting for judgment, waiting for the words that would confirm what she already believed about herself. Mrs. Rodriguez opened the cover, and her breath caught. Page after page of stunning artwork, a girl with wings made of shattered mirrors, each shard reflecting a different emotion, a city built inside a dying tree, characters so detailed you could see the weight of their stories in their eyes, an ocean made of tears with people drowning in their own reflections, a forest where the trees had faces, each one showing a different kind of loneliness. These weren't doodles. This was someone pouring their entire existence onto paper because they had no other way to speak. Mrs. Rodriguez turned page after page, and with each one, she understood more about the girl standing before her. Maya wasn't just talented. She was using art the way other people use therapy. Every drawing was a window into experiences she couldn't voice. The isolation, the pressure, the feeling of being trapped in a life that didn't fit, the longing to be something other than what everyone expected. "Maya!" Mrs. Rodriguez looked up, and her voice was thick with emotion.
Why don't you share these? Why isn't this hanging in the art room? Why aren't you in advanced art classes?" Maya's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Because I'm not good at anything that matters. My parents want me to be a doctor. My dad says art is for people who can't do real work, that it's a hobby, not a future. And he's probably right. I mean, look at me. I can't even talk to people without wanting to disappear. How could I ever be an actual artist?" She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked. "Last year, I showed my mom one of my drawings. Just one. It was this portrait I'd spent weeks on. I was so proud of it. And she looked at it for maybe 5 seconds and said, 'That's nice, honey. Did you finish your chemistry homework?' That's when I knew. It doesn't matter how good I get. It doesn't matter how much I love it. To everyone else, it's just a distraction from the real stuff, the stuff that actually counts." Mrs. Rodriguez sat down, really looked at this girl who'd spent so long making herself small. "Who told you that you weren't good at things that matter?" "Everyone. I mean, not directly, but I don't get good grades like my sister. I'm not athletic, I'm not popular, I'm just the weird, quiet kid who draws pictures. That's not special. That's not scholarship material. That's not doctor material. It's just nothing." Mrs. Rodriguez felt her heart break a little because she'd heard this story before. Different kids, different talents, same crushing weight of other people's expectations. The musician told to focus on math, the writer told to be practical, the dancer told to grow up. All these extraordinary gifts being systematically extinguished because they didn't fit someone else's definition of success. That night, Mrs. Rodriguez couldn't sleep. She kept seeing those drawings, that raw, aching talent being suffocated under layers of other people's expectations. She'd been teaching long enough to know what happens to Mayas. They go to medical school because that's what their parents want. They get good jobs they hate. They stop drawing, and 30 years later, they wake up wondering who they could have been if someone had just seen them. She'd made that mistake before. Early in her career, there was a girl named Jennifer. Brilliant writer, could craft sentences that made you feel things you didn't know you could feel. But her parents pushed engineering, practical, stable, lucrative. Mrs. Rodriguez encouraged Jennifer's writing, but hadn't fought hard enough, hadn't pushed back against the tide of practicality and parental pressure. Jennifer became an engineer, a successful one, but 15 years later she'd sent Mrs. Rodriguez an email, short, haunting. "I wonder who I would have been if I'd been braver, if someone had told me it was okay to choose the thing I loved instead of the thing that made sense." Mrs. Rodriguez cried reading that email, vowed never to let it happen again, never to watch another talented kid get swallowed by other people's dreams. She made a decision, a radical, possibly inappropriate, definitely unconventional decision. She stayed up until 2 in the morning researching, art scholarships for high school students, national competitions, programs for young artists. Her coffee went cold 3 times while she scrolled through submission requirements and deadlines. And then she found it, the National Youth Arts Initiative, a competition for students aged 15 to 18. First place won a $5,000 prize and a full scholarship to the Berkshire Academy of Art, one of the most prestigious art schools in the country. Mrs. Rodriguez looked at the deadline, 3 days away. She photographed Maya's drawings with her phone, took her time with each one, making sure the lighting captured every detail, filled out the application, wrote a recommendation letter at 3 in the morning that made her cry as she typed it. She wrote about Maya's technique, yes, but more importantly, she wrote about what she saw beneath the technique. The courage it takes to create beauty when you're convinced nobody's watching. The discipline required to develop a skill everyone tells you doesn't matter. The quiet revolution of a girl refusing to stop being herself, even when the world keeps telling her to be someone else.
She submitted everything before she could second-guess herself. Then she waited. For 3 weeks, she said nothing. Watched Maya in class, still drawing in the margins, still invisible to everyone else. Watched her shrink into herself during parent-teacher conferences when her mother mentioned how Maya needed to focus more on her science grades. "We're thinking Johns Hopkins for pre-med," her mother had said proudly, while Maya sat there looking like she was slowly disappearing. watched this brilliant, talented kid slowly convincing herself she was ordinary. Mrs. Rodriguez also watched the other students, how they never really saw Maya, how she'd perfected the art of taking up as little space as possible, how she ate lunch alone, drawing in her notebook while other kids laughed and shouted and lived their lives at full volume, how she walked through the hallways like she was apologizing for existing. Then the email came. Mrs. Rodriguez read it 4 times to make sure it was real. Maya Chen had won first place. Out of over 3,000 entries nationwide, the judges had chosen her work. They'd called it hauntingly beautiful and mature beyond her years. They'd said her portfolio showed a rare ability to translate complex emotional landscapes into visual narratives. They'd offered her a full scholarship to Berkshire Academy of Art, including room and board for 4 years. Mrs. Rodriguez printed the letter, put it in an envelope, waited until after class when Maya was packing up her things, moving slowly like she always did, hoping to avoid the crowded hallways. "Maya, I need to show you something." The girl looked up with those eyes that expected disappointment. "Yes, Mrs. Rodriguez?" "Open this." Maya took the envelope, confused, pulled out the letter, started reading. Her hands began shaking. She read it again, then looked up, and her face was doing this thing between shock and disbelief, and something that might have been hope trying desperately not to get crushed. "I don't understand. First place? National Youth Arts Initiative? But I never entered anything." Mrs. Rodriguez sat on the edge of her desk. "I did. I entered your work, because the world needs to see what I see. Extraordinary talent being buried alive by fear and other people's limitations." Maya's breathing got shallow. "You entered my drawings? My personal notebook drawings? Without asking me?" "Yes, and I'd do it again. Because you're 17 years old, Maya, and you've already decided your story is over before it even started. You've already written yourself off, and I refuse to watch that happen. Not on my watch. Not when you have this much to offer." The tears came then. Not gentle crying, the kind of sobbing that comes from years of being unseen, unheard, convinced you're taking up space you don't deserve. Maya collapsed into a chair and just broke. All that silence, all that invisibility, all those years of making herself smaller, it all came pouring out. She cried for the little girl who loved to draw but learned to hide her sketchbooks when her father came home. For the middle schooler who'd stopped raising her hand because being invisible hurt less than being wrong. For the teenager who'd convinced herself that wanting something different than what her parents wanted made her selfish and ungrateful. For every time she'd apologized for existing, for every dream she'd killed before it could disappoint anyone, for every piece of herself she'd erased to fit into someone else's vision of who she should be. Mrs. Rodriguez let her cry, didn't rush her, didn't tell her to calm down, didn't do that thing adults do where they try to fix emotions instead of just witnessing them. She just sat there, bearing witness to this girl finally being seen. When Maya could finally speak, her voice was raw. "Nobody's ever done anything like this for me. My parents don't even know I draw. They think I'm studying when I'm in my room. I've never shown anyone my work because I was so sure they'd laugh, or worse, they'd look at it and see nothing special, just confirm what I already know, that I'm ordinary, forgettable, that the only remarkable thing about me is how unremarkable I am. Maya, listen to me. You're a lot of things. Quiet, yes. Reserved, absolutely. But ordinary? Never. And forgettable? Impossible. You have a gift that most people spend their entire lives searching for. You see the world differently. You feel it differently. And you translate that into art that makes people stop and actually feel something. That's not common. That's rare. That's valuable. That's real. The scholarship offer was sitting right there on the desk. $5,000, full tuition to Berkshire Academy of Art. A future that looked nothing like the one Maya's parents had planned. A future that looked like Maya. "My parents will never let me go," Maya said, and her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "They'll say it's irresponsible, that art school is a waste, that I need to be practical. My dad grew up poor. He sees education as survival, not self-expression. And my mom, she just wants me to be safe, secure. She thinks doctors are safe, artists are risky. They'll never understand. Mrs. Rodriguez leaned forward. Then we'll talk to them together. I'll explain what I see, what this opportunity means. Sometimes parents can't see their kids clearly because they're too busy protecting them from the lives they're afraid of. But protection that kills your spirit isn't protection, it's suffocation. That weekend, Mrs. Rodriguez sat in Maya's living room across from her parents. The house was exactly what she expected, immaculate, filled with academic achievement awards from Maya's older sister, pre-med textbooks stacked on the coffee table like suggestions, photos of the family at hospital charity events. Everything screamed success, stability, respectability. Except Maya, who sat in the corner looking like she was bracing for impact. Mrs. Rodriguez showed them the award letter, the scholarship offer, but more importantly, she showed them their daughter's work, really showed them, made them look at each piece, explained what she saw in the technique, the emotion, the vision. She pointed out the way Maya used negative space to convey isolation, the way her line work communicated movement and emotion, the way she captured light and shadow, not just visually, but emotionally. Maya's father was silent for a long time. He kept staring at a drawing Maya had done of a bird in a cage made of diplomas and medals. Finally, he spoke, and his voice was tight. I grew up poor. My father worked 3 jobs and still couldn't pay rent some months. Art was something rich people did, something you enjoyed after you'd secured your survival. I wanted my daughter to have security, stability. I didn't know she was this good. She never showed us. Because she didn't think it mattered, Mrs. Rodriguez said quietly. She thought the only thing that mattered was becoming what you wanted her to become, even if it meant erasing who she actually is. Maya's mother was crying now too, looking at a portrait Maya had drawn of a girl with her mouth sewn shut with thread made of other people's words. We just wanted her to be safe, to have a good life. My sister was an artist. She struggled her whole life, died broke and bitter. I didn't want that for Maya. I wanted her to have options, security. She will, Mrs. Rodriguez said, but it has to be her life, not a script someone else wrote, not a blueprint built on someone else's fears. Your sister's story doesn't have to be Maya's story, and Maya's safety doesn't have to come at the cost of her soul. The silence in that room was heavy, years of expectations crumbling, dreams being rearranged. And then Maya spoke, and her voice was stronger than anyone had ever heard it. I know you're scared. I know you want me to be safe, but I'm dying inside, Dad. Every day I pretend to care about biology and chemistry and all the things that are supposed to lead to medical school. I feel like I'm disappearing, like I'm becoming a ghost of someone I was never supposed to be. And I know that scares you. But this, she gestured to her artwork, this is the only thing that makes me feel alive, the only thing that makes me feel like I have something to say that's worth saying.
Her father looked at his daughter, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years, and Mrs. Rodriguez watched something shift in his face. The recognition that he'd been so busy protecting his daughter from poverty that he'd been starving her of purpose. When do you start? He asked quietly. Maya went to Berkshire Academy of Art that fall. Mrs. Rodriguez helped her apply for additional grants, drove her to orientation, helped her move into the dorms, hugged her goodbye, and watched her walk into a building full of people who spoke her language. The first semester was hard. Maya called Mrs. Rodriguez crying twice, once because she felt like everyone else was more talented, once because her father had asked if it was too late to transfer to a regular university. But Mrs. Rodriguez talked her through it, reminded her why she was there, reminded her that doubt was part of growth, not evidence of failure. By second semester, something changed. Maya stopped apologizing for her work, stopped shrinking in critiques, started raising her hand in class, started believing that her voice, her vision, her perspective mattered. She made friends, other artists who understood the language of creating something from nothing, who understood that making art wasn't indulgence, it was necessity. 4 years later, Maya's senior thesis exhibition was featured in Art Forum magazine. The theme was invisibility, portraits of people society overlooks, the homeless man everyone walks past, the janitor nobody makes eye contact with, the quiet kid in the back row. Each portrait was so detailed, so emotionally raw, that viewers stood in front of them and wept, because Maya had learned to see the unseen, and in seeing them, she made them impossible to ignore. A graphic novel she illustrated won the Eisner Award, the story of a girl who could only speak through drawings, who lived in a world that valued words over images, logic over emotion, conformity over creativity. It became required reading in art schools across the country. A publisher offered her a 3-book contract. Museums started acquiring her work. She started making a living doing what she loved. But none of that was the important part. The important part was that Maya learned to take up space, to use her voice, to stop apologizing for existing, to understand that being different wasn't a deficit, it was her greatest strength. The important part was that she learned she deserved to be seen, that her gifts weren't frivolous or selfish or impractical. They were essential to her, to the world. She came back to visit Mrs. Rodriguez 5 years after graduation, walked into that same classroom where she used to sit in the back row, invisible. Except now she walked differently, stood differently, existed differently. She moved through the world like she belonged in it. "I never thanked you properly," Maya said, "for seeing me when I couldn't even see myself, for believing in me when I didn't know I was worth believing in, for fighting for me when I'd already given up fighting for myself." Mrs. Rodriguez smiled, and her eyes were wet. "You don't need to thank me. You did the hard part. You had the courage to become who you actually are instead of who everyone expected you to be. That's the bravest thing anyone can do. I just opened a door. You walked through it." "You did more than that," Maya said. "You taught me that being seen isn't something you have to earn, that your gifts don't have to justify themselves to be valid, that you don't have to be loud to matter. You taught me that quiet can be powerful, that different can be extraordinary, that the things that make you weird are usually the things that make you irreplaceable." Today, Maya's illustrations hang in museums. Her graphic novels are taught in schools. She runs workshops for young artists who feel invisible, who think their gifts don't matter, who need someone to tell them what Mrs. Rodriguez told her. "You are not ordinary. You are not forgettable. You matter. Your voice matters. Your vision matters. The world needs exactly what you have to offer, even if you can't see it yet." But here's what most people don't understand. Maya's story isn't unique. Right now, in classrooms everywhere, there are kids like her, sitting quietly in back rows, convinced they're ordinary, hiding talents that could change the world, waiting for just one person to actually look, to actually see them, to say those words that change everything. "I see you. You matter. Don't disappear." Maybe you're a teacher reading this. Maybe you're a parent, a coach, a mentor, someone who's in proximity to young people trying to figure out who they're allowed to become. Your attention isn't just nice, it's not just encouraging. Sometimes it's literally the difference between a life fully lived and a life spent in silent suffocation. There's a Maya in your life right now, someone quiet, someone who's made themselves small, someone with a gift they're terrified to share because they've been taught that what makes them different makes them worthless. And you might be the only person positioned to see them, to validate them, to change their entire trajectory with one moment of genuine attention. Think about the people in your orbit. The kid who always has their nose in a book, the employee who stays late working on projects nobody asked for, the student who asks questions nobody else thinks to ask, the quiet one who observes everything but says little. What are they hiding? What gifts are they burying because nobody's ever told them those gifts matter? Don't let quiet mean invisible. Don't let different mean damaged. Some of the most extraordinary talents in human history belong to people everyone else overlooked. The kid who stammered became a renowned poet. The girl who couldn't sit still became an Olympic athlete. The boy everyone called weird became a groundbreaking scientist because one person refused to let them disappear. Mrs. Rodriguez still teaches, still looks for the quiet ones, still believes that her job isn't just teaching English, it's teaching students that they're worth being seen, that their gifts matter, that the world needs exactly what you have to offer, even if you can't see it yet. She's found 7 more Mayas over the years, a dancer, a programmer, a filmmaker, a mathematician, a chef, a poet, an engineer, each one convinced they were ordinary, each one extraordinary once someone actually looked. If this story touched something in you, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this with a teacher who changed your life. Comment below and tell me who saw your potential when nobody else did, who refused to let you disappear. Because those stories matter, those moments matter, that recognition can be everything. And if you're the quiet one reading this, the one who thinks you're ordinary, the one who's been taught your gifts don't count, listen carefully. You are exactly what the world needs. Your differences aren't deficits. Your quiet isn't emptiness. And somewhere, someone is waiting to see you. Don't give up before they get the chance. Keep drawing, keep writing, keep creating, keep being weird and different and stubbornly yourself, because your gifts matter. Even if nobody's told you yet, especially if nobody's told you yet. Sometimes all it takes is one person, one moment, one decision to actually look at someone everyone else is looking past. Be that person. Notice the unnoticed. See the unseen. Ask the quiet kid what they're working on. Pay attention to the margins of notebooks. Look for the gifts people are hiding because they've been taught those gifts don't count. Recognition isn't just validation, sometimes it's salvation, and you might be holding someone's future in your willingness to see them. Don't waste that power. Use it today, right now, before another Maya convinces herself she doesn't matter. Because she does, and so do you.
If this story touched something deep inside you, don't just scroll past. Hit that subscribe button right now. Because we share stories like this every week, stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things when someone finally sees them. And here's what I need you to do. Share this video with a teacher who changed your life. Tag them, send it to them, let them know they mattered. Because teachers like Mrs. Rodriguez rarely hear how much they've impacted someone. Drop a comment below and tell me, who saw your potential when nobody else did? Who was your Mrs. Rodriguez who refused to let you disappear? I read every single comment, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Because here's the truth. Recognition isn't just validation. Sometimes it's salvation, and your comment might save someone's life.